Coach Lewis here, and in this video we're going to talk about things that may be negatively impacting your sleep and how you can get better sleep. First thing we're going to talk about that may be hindering your sleep is caffeine. Caffeine is a drug. Specifically, it's a psychoactive drug that boosts your alertness by blocking the receptors of adenosine. Because of this, it can make it harder to fall asleep if you're trying to fall asleep with caffeine still in your system. Caffeine has an average half-life of 5 to 7 hours. This means that after ingesting a dose of caffeine, it will take on average 5 to 7 hours for just half of that caffeine to be digested. So for example, if you drank a cup of coffee at 6 p.m. and then tried to go to bed 5 hours later at 11 p.m., you would still have half of that cup of coffee still in your system. Let's say you drank a cup of coffee at 1 p.m. That means that at 10 hours later, you would still have a fourth of that caffeine still in your system. That would be like trying to go to bed after downing a quarter cup of coffee. The takeaway for caffeine and sleep is that if you're gonna consume caffeine, do so in the morning so that it doesn't affect your sleep. Another thing that affects your sleep is alcohol. Alcohol is a drug. Specifically, it's a sedative. And while it's not any harder to fall asleep with alcohol in your system, what it does do to your sleep is it reduces the quality of your sleep. Alcohol fragments sleep, meaning you're more likely to wake up throughout the night, even though you may not recall it. Alcohol suppresses REM sleep, so all the benefits you get from REM sleep are greatly diminished if you have alcohol in your system. And marijuana and tobacco both have similar effects on sleep. In one of my previous videos, we talked about all the benefits of REM sleep. One of those benefits being memory. A study was done on college students to see how alcohol would affect them learning new information. In this study, college students were recruited for a 1-week experiment. On the first day, all participants learned an artificial form of algebra, as REM sleep is known to aid in this type of learning. All students learned the new information to a 90% proficiency. They were then divided into 3 groups to be tested a week later on the information that they retained. Group 1 received full natural sleep across the whole week and performed the same, if not better, when retested. Group 2 had all the same sleeping conditions, but on the first night, the students got legally drunk and they forgot about 50% of the original knowledge when retested. Group 3, again, had all the same sleeping conditions, but on the third night, the students got legally drunk and they forgot around 40% of the original knowledge. Let's put that into a real-world example. You've got a test on Monday, and you've been studying all week for this test on Monday. Friday rolls around and the boys want to go out drinking. You decide to go out drinking, and the unfortunate truth is the alcohol you consume from that night is going to have an impact on the information that you retain from your week of learning. Another area that impacts your sleep is the presence of light. Getting a lot of sunlight during the day is a good thing, and it's great for your sleep and regulating your circadian rhythm. But at night, we really want to cut back on that light, limit our exposure to artificial forms of light in order to initiate the process of sleep. The problem we have is we live in a world where we can have light 24/7, from being in brightly lit rooms to TVs and to our cell phones. All of that light can make going to bed a really difficult process. But it's not just about the light in a room, it's also about the temperature in that room and how that affects sleep. Your core body temperature needs to dip slightly in order to induce sleep. Because of that, you'll always find it easier to fall asleep in a room that's too cold versus a room that's too hot. The ideal room temperature to induce sleep is around 65 degrees Fahrenheit. The last big reason people aren't getting enough sleep isn't being prioritized. There's misconceptions out there that sleep is for the weak, that if you want to get ahead in life, you have to sacrifice sleep in order to chase success. However, that's just not the case. Your performance in your life as a whole is going to be objectively better if you're taking care of your health. So to prioritize your sleep, do wake up and go to bed at the same time each and every day. Do give yourself the amount of sleep that your body needs. Don't restrict your sleep during the week and try to binge on sleep during the weekend. And don't rely on an alarm clock to pry yourself out of bed. The last section of this video is going to go over 11 tips for how you can get better sleep. Now, these tips aren't in any particular order, with the exception of this first tip, which is the number one tip for better sleep, and that is to stick to a sleep schedule, which means aiming to go to bed and wake up at similar times each and every day. The best tip you can do for your sleep in regulating your circadian rhythm. Tip number 2 is don't exercise too late in the day. Exercise is great, but exercise raises your cortisol, which makes you feel alert, which normally is a good thing, but not a good thing if you want to try to get ready for bed. Also, when you're exercising, you're probably doing it in a brightly lit room. And as we know from previous talks about light, all that light is suppressing our body's production of melatonin, which makes it harder to fall asleep. Tip number 3 is avoid caffeine and nicotine. As talked about before, caffeine is a stimulant that makes you feel alert. And if you have caffeine late in the day, there's a good chance that it's going to affect your ability to fall asleep later that night. Now, nicotine is also a stimulant, and it's been found that smokers will often wake up earlier than they should due to nicotine withdrawal. Tip number 4 is avoid alcoholic drinks before bed. Falling asleep with alcohol in your system will drastically reduce the quality of your sleep by fragmenting your sleep and reducing your REM sleep. Tip number 5 is avoid large meals and beverages late at night. A light snack is okay, but having a heavy meal can cause digestive issues, which interferes with sleep. Plus, your body's digestive system naturally wants to slow down when it gets towards nighttime. Also, drinking too many fluids can interfere with sleep, as it can cause you to wake up throughout the night in order to urinate. Tip number 6 is get plenty of light exposure during the day and limit light at night. We've talked about this one a few times. Light is great during the day. We want to boost our cortisol, get plenty of sunlight, but at nighttime we want to limit our exposure to light in order to up our melatonin levels to make it easier to fall asleep. Tip number 7 is don't nap after 3. Naps are great, but having them too late in the day can lower your adenosine levels to the point where it can make it hard to fall asleep later at night. Tip number 8 is to make sure to leave time to relax before bed. It's important to have time before you go to sleep to unwind and stop thinking about things that are stressing you out. Try to schedule your days so that there's time to relax before you go to sleep. Tip number 9 is don't lie in bed awake. Do not spend more than 20 minutes lying in bed awake. When you do this, your body associates being in bed with a place where you're supposed to be awake. It is better to move to another place, cool and low in light, where you can engage in relaxing activities while waiting for the urge to sleep to find you. Tip number 10 is take a hot bath or shower before bed. As talked about previously, your core body temperature needs to dip slightly in order to induce sleep. What a hot bath or shower does is it warms your body, it brings the heat to the surface of your skin, and then when you get out of that hot bath or shower, all that heat is essentially pouring out of your body and allows you to dip your core body temperature quicker when you go to sleep. Tip number 11 is have a dark, cool in temperature, gadget-free bedroom. It's all about creating the best sleep environment possible in order to induce sleep. Dark in order to raise your melatonin, cool in order to drop your core body temperature, temperature being around 65 degrees, being that golden number to be at, and then gadget-free bedroom, again in order to reduce light and then gadget free also, in order to reduce the stress that might come from looking at your phone, scrolling through social media. So in summary, we talked about the main reasons people don't get enough sleep and how you can optimize the sleep that you're currently getting with those sleep tips. It's my hope that you take this knowledge and apply it to your own life, because life is better with a full night of sleep.